So everybody always advises us that we must focus on a niche, a very specific niche, and really don't try and be everything to everybody, especially when you're starting out a brand new practice or brand new business. Well, my question this morning is, does it really work? Because, that's what everybody says, but is the proof in the pudding? So this morning, my question is further to this, like, how do we even decide so early on? When you're just starting out, you think you have an idea and you think maybe you have experience, maybe you don't. How do you even decide where you want to niche and all of that? There's so much uncertainty, so much pressure, and so much doubt in the beginning of a practice. And sometimes even if you've been around for 10, 15, 20, 50 years, maybe still there's an opportunity to at least consider whether you should be niching or not. So this morning we are tackling this with my amazing featured guest, who I will introduce in a second. And they are turning the niching dial all the way to maximum. So really looking forward to today's show. This is Propulsion, the podcast for forward-thinking and driven and ambitious financial planning professionals. It is the catalyst to the exponential growth of your financial planning practice, your business, or your franchise. This is where professionals come in order to learn about the latest technology, to learn about best practice when it comes to running and managing their business, as well as marketing, sales, relationship building, the best and most valuable interviews with local and international guests, and a whole host of other things. Without any further ado, here is your host, Francois du Toit. Morning, Werner. Morning, Stefan.
Hi, Francois.
Hi, Francois. Morning, listeners.
Welcome. Yeah, so welcome to the show. It's been a while. You've been on my list for a long time, okay? And then by chance, we did run into each other and we thought, like, this is a great opportunity. Let's just set it up and get it done. I've been following you guys for quite a while. I got to interact with you in the business where you work a little bit. And, through that, just seeing how you guys have grown. And I'm so interested to get into your story today and learn more about why you're doing what you're doing, how you're doing it. And lifting the kimono a little bit, as much as you're willing to, obviously. So there's no pressure, but just a warm welcome to the show.
Thanks, Francois.
Yeah, no, thanks, Francois. And we also just want to thank you for the opportunity to invite us to your show. Both of us are big fans, and we've learned so much from other advisors on this platform. So it's a massive opportunity. So thank you so much.
Awesome stuff. Thank you very much, Stefan, for that. All right, so let's get into, I want to start off with, first off, like I always start with a story. So I want to know how you guys landed up in financial planning, because if you're going to tell me today that you planned this from the time you were 5 years old, you did not want to be a fireman, you wanted to be a financial planner, it will be the first time ever. But just maybe, Stefan, let's start with you. How did you land up in this profession?
Yes, Francois, yeah, I agree to your statement. I think if you meet a person that's like from a childhood wanted to study financial planning, please interview him, because I would love to meet this individual. So I think growing up, if you told me I'm going to be in financial planning, I would have really thought you are crazy. I always wanted to be an engineer. I studied mechanical engineering, and that's actually where I met Werner as well. So we've been roommates since varsity days. And I worked as a mechanical engineer for 2 years, but literally, hate is probably a strong word, but I hated every moment of it. So one day I was literally looking at like one of the senior managers in the office, and I was just thinking, is this me in 40 years or 50 years from now? And I couldn't see myself doing this for another day. And it was just commodity prices was down. It was literally just after the Marikana tragedy. So then after that, sort of they gave a lot of opportunities. There was like severance packages that went out. And I said to my fiance at that stage, she thought she's marrying an engineer. And the next moment she heard she's engaged to a financial planner. So I said to her, the opportunity came up for me to try something else. I always loved finances. I always loved business. And then from there, probably about 8-9 years ago, I went into the industry, and the rest is history.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I mean, Werner, you've got a similar sort of story. So now I know you guys were roommates, and that's how you know each other. But you're a qualified attorney, am I right? Like, I think that was where you started off.
Yes, yeah, Francis. So I studied law. After varsity, I actually always wanted to become an advocate. That's the ideal picture that I saw myself in. And yeah, after varsity, I had to do 2 years of articles. I worked at a really nice firm. I always enjoyed the work. But one thing that I didn't enjoy is the fighting side of being an attorney. And that's something that nobody taught you. So in hindsight, if you think back at it, you're always going to represent someone. So you're always going to be fighting for a specific party. And then the other thing that was quite a concern to me was the lifestyle that went with it. And then by that time, while I was doing my articles, Stefan actually joined the industry, and he was then doing training at PPS. So I would always see the lifestyle that I had, the flexibility that the industry offered, something that I didn't have. And unfortunately, being an attorney, it's also not an industry that pays very well. So I had quite a lot of friends in the financial services industry, and that opened my eyes and made me thought, but isn't there other things outside of law that I actually want to do to be doing something completely different? And I actually had a conversation with Stefan one day. I said to him, listen, I'm at a crossroad. I'm not very happy in the space that I'm in. And what does it entail to be in this industry? And then I joined it.
Yeah, and I think it also doesn't help that you have a dad that's in the industry, right? So
yeah, I must say.
It's one way to get him to the show, because you have his son on the show and then he pops up again. Yes, so Frans, welcome. Yeah. But yeah, it's such an amazing story, and I always believe that people land up in financial planning in the profession. You know, it's not something that, as we said earlier, that I don't think you get drawn to it. You actually just get introduced to it, and then maybe get drawn into it. But it's not something that's a natural. And I think maybe it's because, you know, there's no salary. Like, how do you start off? You're young. You know, it's more difficult in that. And I think that is something that makes you guys so remarkable, because you are both still very young, you know, but you have done phenomenal things since you've started. So one question, obviously, I mean, being roommates, I can already see, so the one is making the plans and the other one is getting you out of trouble. So that worked well, but now you guys are working as a team. And I want to know, you know, how do you do that? How does this dynamic work? Are you such good friends that everything just works? You know each other so well, almost completing each other's sentences kind of thing. But, you know, are you like, how does this team thing work? Do you each have your own clients? Do you work together on the same client? Like, what is that setup?
So, Franco, I think the roles has changed. So, Vanat is the one now making the plans, and I'm getting us out of trouble. But no, we do complement one another quite well. I think we're best friends, but our personalities are much different. So, I think we shed some light in some of the blind spots in our lives, and also in the way we approach clients, etc. But both of us have our own clientele. We've got our own practices and our own books. But when we approach clients, or when we host workshops or seminars, or when we approach people, we do it together. We just believe that 1 + 1 will equal 3 that way. We are healthy competition, so competition in a very good way. So we push one another, you know, to greatness. And I think that's been working really well for us. We're not afraid to share something. If something's working for me, I'll share it with Vanat. If it works for him, he'll share it back to me, or maybe just he's a soundboard to me in some way. So I will go to him and say, look, I don't know, this is something that I'm currently going through, that, you know, maybe just battling to position something to clients. I don't know. And he'll be a soundboard to me, and I can bounce off ideas. He obviously, being in the industry as well, he knows the emotional side of it. So, you know, if you're going through an emotional challenge, or if there's something that you're working through, he'll understand, because it's something that he might have worked through in the past as well. So I think like the way we work is obviously quite like opposite, because we're running our own practices and we're running our own targets and everything, but yet we're all working together. Like his team and my team even work together. They know one another quite well. And if we've got big events, everybody works together. So we're actually then one massive team.
Yeah, that's awesome. And from your perspective, Vanat, you know, if you think about this whole team dynamic as well, I mean, what is the thing that you think is the standout thing for you specifically, you know, from this point? If you think Stefan went into this first, then you joined, you know, what is the biggest benefit of not going at this alone? Even though both of you are part of a bigger business at this point, I'm pretty sure at some point, somewhere in the future, I don't know. But at this point, you work together, you know, you each have your own thing. But doing this thing together and not on your own, what is the biggest benefit for you?
Yeah, so Frans, I must say, I think one of the main reasons for my success this far, I think, is from what I've learned from Stefan. I think he's been there from day one. So when I joined the industry, I absolutely knew nothing about insurance. And when thinking back about this, my dad's been in the industry for 20, 25 years, but I've never really known what he did. I knew he worked for an insurance company, but I didn't know that he sell insurance, what his job entailed. Until I actually started having friends in the industry and seeing what they do. So when I joined PPS, I basically learned everything from Stefan. So he taught me everything from setting appointments, how do you present the first meeting, how do you go into a second meeting, how do you conduct a business. And so that helped quite a lot. I think the other thing that's very similar to what we do is our processes are exactly the same. I think that boils down to from what I learned from him at the beginning. So that's the main thing is, and I think you need an accountability partner. You can't do this alone. It's very important to have someone that you can turn to and say, listen, I'm struggling with this. Can you please help me? How do you, for instance, overcome this obstacle? We have quite a lot of strategy sessions. We don't mind sharing, although Stefan said, like he said, we've got different targets, we've got different goals. We share quite a lot. So every year we do our planning together. On a quarterly basis, we go and sit down and see how do we refine the process? How do we better our value proposition? How can we basically raise the bar and extinguish ourselves from other advisors in the industry?
It's actually quite funny because sometimes we meet with one another's clients, and the moment you start asking questions, you see, no, this is one of Werner's clients, and he actually took a photo with one of my clients before, and they just said they just wanted to say hi, and I was like, look, you're still in good hands. So anyway,
yeah, that's awesome. Right, so. Before I get to what you do I mean, everybody can see your fantastic setup and everything. So I want to talk about what you do with that setup as well. But you guys focus, I won't say exclusively, but is it exclusively on doctors or is it mainly on doctors? Because you've decided on the medical profession that's going to be your niche. So my question is why, first off, and then secondly, how did you come to decide that that's going to be the profession you want to work with?
Okay, so Francois, yeah, I think just to give some background, obviously you know by now that we both started at PPS. So you spoke about Frans Hatting. Yeah, he got us both into, or me at least, into the industry. I also didn't know anything about insurance, and we were on a hunting trip, and he explained insurance to me in like an hour, like nobody has ever did before. And then since that moment, I thought, like, again, also for the flexibility, and you're an entrepreneur, you're starting your own business, and hence I joined. But back then we were part of PPS and their agency force. So we started with a niche. For those of you that don't know, obviously PPS is for graduate professionals. So the main focus from day one was always working with four-year degrees, and being an engineer, and coming from an engineering background, I also didn't want to walk to each and every one of my friends and you're like, listen, do you have life insurance? And do you have, because initially we were focusing more on the long-term insurance side. So the strategy initially was to go to them and ask if they know someone. And I even do it to this very day, opposed to asking somebody directly, can you help me? Maybe do you know of someone that can help me? Just maybe a better way to position it. And hence I started with engineers. But I also picked up a year, 2 years into the line, you know, there was a reason why I left that industry, and it wasn't necessarily my ideal client that I wanted to work with. So over the years, it's by trial and error. I thought, well, it's very nice working with medical professionals. I think one of the main reasons, at least for me, is that nowhere in their 5 or 6 year degree are they ever exposed to financial terminology. So the sad or the unfortunate thing is it places a massive target on their backs. So you do get, like in any industry, you get people that exploit that. But from day one, we wanted to be professionals in the industry, and we thought we're gonna empower them, and we're gonna get them to a place where we change the stigma of a medical professional doesn't know anything about financial planning, doesn't know anything about their personal finances, and their business affairs. So we started focusing on medical doctors. We had a strategy session probably about 4 or 5 years ago already. And we said, well, our ideal client is doctors. And we had a couple of doctors on our book due to the PPS legacy. And we just started focusing on that, creating a better value proposition. And again, the rest is history from there.
Yeah, that's. I always like hearing, like, how does that happen? Do you just figure out that, look, I mean, I connect better with them, Werner? Do you think that it's just maybe, or is it a more lucrative profession to be dealing with? Is it an easier profession to be dealing with than the others? What was it for you?
Yeah, so Francois, to answer that question, I think it's not a thing that we connected better with them, because it's completely a different background. We couldn't relate to them at all. So coming from a law background, coming from an engineering background, we didn't know what their world is about. But like Stefan said, what we learned from the beginning is they had a huge need for financial education. Because if you think about a medical curriculum, nowhere in a medical curriculum are they exposed to any financial literacy. It's not like a BCom degree or an engineering degree where there's some finance aspects in it. So they know nothing about finances. And I think a lot of them gets approached in their final years when they start working and they know they have to implement certain benefits, but they don't understand exactly how that benefits work. So you always, and Kobus Klein always spoke about it, and he said you have to get your clients to become advocates for you. And how do you get someone to become an advocate for you? And we actually went down, when we had that strategy session, we sat down and said, okay, we want to work with doctors. So there's definitely a need in terms of financial education. But for those ideal clients to become an advocate for us, we need to add value to them. And the value that we decided to add to them is in the form of education. And I think that was also the origin of Money in Medicine. That's how Money in Medicine was born, because we wanted to create this educational platform, a trusted resource where they can turn to educate themselves. Because thinking about this, if you're going to research any topic nowadays on the internet, if you just type in, do I need a financial advisor? There's so much information coming up, but can you actually trust that information? So we wanted to create a platform that is unbiased, that's available to everyone, that anyone can turn to. Whether you're another financial advisor or whether you are our ideal client, you can go there and you can get that information that you want at your own convenience. So that's the main reason why we went into this.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, on that point, so I want to sort of ask you guys, and maybe Stefan, you can respond to this. I mean, doctors are notoriously busy, right? Whenever I go there, like luckily I didn't have to go there recently, but they're always late. They're never on time. They give you like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, so I mean, that's just the nature of the game, right? So a doctor is just so busy. Their time is worth money more than probably any other profession apart from accounting or tax maybe. But that's extremely important. So how are you guys dealing with that? Because I think, like identifying this problem where there's not enough education, they don't know about this. But are you like sort of finding that they are actually going to consume this content? Or do you need to talk to them about it? Do you need to make them aware? Like, how does that whole thing sort of play together? So that time constraint, and then also getting them to actually consume this amazing education and content and things that you guys make available.
So Francois, I think also when we look at content, we've still not arrived, definitely not. We try to continuously improve. We understand these guys run hectic schedules. We always talk about their 25-hour day. And hence you'll see in some of the content that we originally posted, it was half an hour, originally 15 minutes. So we brought it down to like 5 minutes, 6 minutes, so that these guys can, on their way to work, or if they quickly just have a quick lunch break. I joke about it. The one doctor that I actually met at Steve Biko the one day, I actually sat in the doctor's lounge at the back where they are like getting showered and ready for scrubs. And I was literally in the middle of it and we were talking about his finances. But also my favorite book says, where your money is, there your heart will be as well. So these doctors, what they do sometimes is when they invested in you and when they invested into markets and you start listening about that retirement annuity that we took out, have a listen at this. We did a podcast on asset allocation. Go and have a listen to this. Listen about fees. You asked me about how our fees work. Look at this, the Q&A that we did with fees. So the moment they are invested into something and the moment you've spoken to them about something, just start adding a little bit of value over time. And again, I want to, that was for me one of the best episodes I've ever watched, was also Kobus Klein on advocate, like your clients becoming advocates, because then you're really raising the bar, you are adding value. And then I think lastly also, that's also why we went digital and why we went into podcasts and videos, because we understand that when a doctor had a call of 14 hours or 15 hours, the last person he wants to talk to is a financial advisor that wants to sell him life insurance. However, there is during that 24-hour day, the mind wanders and he thinks about stuff. And then if we've said something 2 days ago, we know that the first person that he's going to go and listen to, or the first person that he's going to, maybe just read up about is Money and Medicine, or the first company that he's going to look at is Money and Medicine. So the content needs to be relevant. It needs to be in their world. We're very strategic when we send them certain stuff. It's typically if they're busy with a certain thing. So we also understand the life stages of doctors. So the content that we send to an intern is much different than somebody that's in private, because we know the challenges is different. Practice management is more important, whereas somebody starting as an intern, a conversation on practice management is going to mean zero to him. But other conversations on other topics is going to be much more relevant. So yeah, I think strategy and being relevant all the time and continuously marketing.
And that's a very interesting point that, you're mentioning a couple of things there, and I think people need to be listening carefully to what the things are. You're talking about things like practice management and all sorts of things. So it means that you're not only focusing on the financial planning side of stuff for doctors. It's, if you think about adding value to them, what are the things that they struggle with? Because the one thing that you've done, I think that is absolutely amazing, is the fact that you have identified a problem, and that is that there is not enough or proper or trusted education specifically for these professionals. My brother, for example, is a veterinarian. The same issue, right? It's the same almost as being a doctor, except your patients can't talk back to you, but they can bite, apparently. But in that sense, you don't get taught about building a practice. You don't get taught about managing the finances, never mind personal financial planning, etc. So, that's obviously a big problem that you've solved. But now you're alluding to this thing around like practice management. So, Werner, what are some of the topics that you guys do content on and that you make available to doctors that are not necessarily in the reference or the framework of a typical financial planner?
Yeah, so Francois, that's actually very interesting. So it comes back to, I think, adding the value to them. Is we learn that, and it's also, I think it's to that bridge in terms of their knowledge. Stefan always says that your best doctors are not necessarily the doctors that's clinically the best, but it's actually the doctors that's running their businesses like an entrepreneur. So a lot of the stuff that we speak about and the value that we add is in terms of how do you register a tax number? How do you file your tax returns? Do you need a private banker? What is the value of having a private banker? How do you buy your first car? How do you buy your first house? What do you need to consider? Do you buy that in a company? Do you buy it in a trust? What is the correct marital regime? Because I've had a client the other day who said to me, listen, I'm getting married. Apparently, I need to choose a marital regime. What are the differences between them? I need to meet with an attorney. I know you studied law. So those are all things outside of financial services that clients actually comes to us. And I think it comes back to the point that where we've added so much value to them and we've educated them, we actually became a trusted source. And a lot of the questions that they started asking us is now relating outside of financial services. We had clients in private practice that asked us, how do you start a private practice? I need to start my private practice, but how do I start it? How do I finance it? Where do I get funding? And it's not stuff that we can necessarily advise them on because it's not in our scope. But it's definitely stuff that's in our long-term vision in terms of expanding our business to add much more value outside of financial services. And it also comes back to the point that we want to be everything for a specific group of people, and we want to be everything to doctors. So I think in future, potentially, we want to add all these services to them.
Francois, and I think also it's as the need arises. So interesting, like Werner the other day, I had a phone call at like 3:30 in the morning. And it was one of his doctors, which is a female, and she was alone after call, and somebody broke into her car. So they literally smashed open her window, and she was traumatized. So right after that, we, like yesterday, recorded an episode on self-defense. So self-defense has got absolutely nothing to do with financial planning, but we believe that if someone visits our portal and there's a video on self-defense, again, we're adding value, which has got nothing to do with financial planning, yet actually everything to do with it. So yeah.
And I love that. often people would ask me, like, what do you do? Like back in the day when I was a consultant, etc., I was quite successful in that. And then people would always ask from other companies or other consultants in the same company, whatever, they would come and say, what is it that you do that, how did you get that advisor to do da? And I just I did everything but what was expected of me. So it's almost when you do things that are not expected, but it's value adding. So you just don't do things that they expect you not to do. I'm just saying there was no expectation at all that you would even bring value in that sense. And that's the stuff that moves people, and that's the stuff that makes a big difference. So we have to start thinking wider than this. So on that note, I want to get into money and medicine, right? So that is your it started off as a podcast. I know you're doing fantastic videos, and I said to you when I ran into you, like, your game has just lifted completely in the last couple of months. So really awesome what you are doing. My big question to you, Stefan, is why? Why are you embracing the world of podcasts, the world of video, the world of social media? Why is that? I mean, doctors really, do they actually use those things, or like, what are they doing? I know there's a lot of chatter going on while people are performing a surgery on you, and they're having a lot of fun and laughing and whatever. But I mean, like, do these guys and ladies even get an opportunity to consume this stuff? I mean, what has the experience been? So I know there's a lot of questions wrapped up in that, but let's just start with, why are you embracing this so much?
Okay, so it's quite a funny story. So we wanted to go into podcasts and videos because we were just initiating where the market was going. And then literally just before, how it goes, you now listen to yourself. I remember the very first video we did was on an iPhone in Werner's house. And we literally just laughed for an hour, where we started the video and then we made a joke and we restarted and we did it again. And after an hour, we were actually now cross at ourselves because we just wasted an hour, and we did the video and it was okay. And we kept that video because it's something that we want to look back at and see where we came from. But so we bought all the equipment, we got everything ready, but we never pulled the trigger. And then lockdown happened. And we were sort of like forced, because we then called one another. I remember when President Ramaphosa actually said, listen, we're going into hard lockdown. Werner was the first person to call me and say, what are we going to do? And I said, just give me half an hour so that we can just think on a strategy. And I remember we wanted to buy a mic. So we didn't have a mic. That was the only thing that was still outstanding. And we drove to each and every shop that sold this sort of stuff in order to try and get a mic, but everything was sold out because I think everybody then wanted to go into the virtual game. Luckily, we got a mic, and we just started. And initially, it was just to say, well, okay, we wanted to get content out, and we still wanted to give information because we got a lot of questions from these doctors. So a doctor would ask you something about a retirement annuity, and you could see when you explain it to the doctor, he doesn't really understand it, or he understands it, but there's still maybe more questions. So we wanted to create something that you can put on repeat, or if you didn't hear me quite clearly, you can go back and you can go watch it again. So it's just more relevant. And on his way to work or on her way to work, she can listen to it. And the rest is sort of like from there we start building and say, well, it really works. If we get a question on something, we can just send a link, or if we get if we want to drive something, so it's, let's say, tax month, it's February, we want people to top up their retirement annuities and take out new tax-free savings or top it up. Then we did we've got episodes that we've done on that. We share that information. So we know, even though we're not having a physical meeting, we are having a meeting with them. So they know us. They've also shared some of our content. So sometimes when we have a function, we'll be introduced to somebody and they're like, no, we've watched all your episodes. So it's already familiar to them. So there's already a form of trust. I always believe that people make decisions on trust, and skepticism is at an all-time high. You can just think about yourself before you make a decision. You go research somebody, you go check what is the, this person's Facebook look like, and what is some of the articles that this person wrote, and who is this person before you do business with this individual. So we believe in marriage and not in a date. So I say, if you can have a lot of dates in the form of virtual content and information adding value, you can actually then establish a long-term relationship with somebody. So all of that is sort of backed into I think the overview into why we went into not social media, into these tools and podcasts and YouTube, etc.
Awesome, man. And there's a big lesson in this, right? Because we often think that they won't listen to it. They doctors, or they this, or they that, and they don't listen to this, or older clients wouldn't be interested. It's only younger clients, and it's only this and it's only that. And we come up with all these excuses, and then we never do anything, and we lose out on the biggest opportunity that was probably on your doorstep. So I think that's always a big lesson for me in this. But Werner, like I noticed that you guys are also planning sort of releasing your own course, something that I've been saying, look, there's a big bunch. And I mean, a lot of this content, the same with us, like with Propulsion Live, etc. All this content is available. You can do it whenever you want. I mean, like if you literally want to know anything about running a financial planning business, I'm pretty sure in the 165 episodes, you're going to find amazing stuff that will help you. But there's so many questions that one gets again and again and again, or there's these basics. And often, you know, when a client comes into your world, they don't, okay, doctors are a little bit different. I'll give you that. But mostly, like specifically if they're new, they're just starting off, they're just moving maybe from the state and they're going private. You know, it's hard that first while to get up and running and get the cash flow going like any other business. So using something like a course to teach them the basics so that you don't have to spend one-on-one time with them. It's a way to bring them into your world, to make them familiar with you. So it's something that I advocate quite strongly, to have some form of something like that in the client base that one is looking after. But has that been your reason for bringing this out? I don't know when it's coming out, but I know it's coming up. But what is your reason for also launching a course if you're doing all these fantastic like content?
Yeah, Francois, that's the exact reason. Because you only have so many hours within a day. And we spend a lot of time educating these people on very simple topics, actually. So, and that was also mainly the reason for the podcast. And the podcast evolves in such a way that people wanted to have more content, and that's where the online courses are flowing through now. You've asked a question previously and said, are people actually consuming this? And I think the funny thing is, we get the most of our queries like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, when those doctors are on call and they've got a break. And that's actually when they look at these podcasts and over weekends. And a similar thing with the courses, like a very simple thing is, how do you do a budget? How do you draw up a budget? One of the courses that we are busy building is to teach people to do a budget, because it's something very simple that you actually assume they know how to do, but they don't know how to do it. So the main reason for those online courses is to take time out of our hands where we don't have to spend one-on-one time with them to show them how those kind of things work, where they can go to the platform before they have a meeting with us to educate themselves, to become familiar with the topic. And when we actually have a meeting with them, they are committed. So they want to move to the next step. And we can actually turn that into business and be profitable, and also to use our time as effectively as possible.
It's amazing. I love it. And it's embracing this stuff and giving it a good go, because you guys have been very consistent as well, which is obviously the secret sauce always to anything that you do. And also, I mean, I see some people commenting like great ideas and ideas and ideas and ideas. And yes, it's fantastic, but only if you do something with it, right? So that's the important thing. And I think you guys are following through on your vision and what it is that you want to do. Now, I want to ask you about something specific that you two went and did, specifically with Michelle in the UK with Standards International, called, and I don't know how to pronounce this, please. So if somebody wants to laugh at me or correct me, please, you're more than welcome. So I'm not sure if it's ISO 22222 or if it's ISO 22222. But anyway, I'm keen to learn more about this, Stefan. Like, what is this about? Why did you do it? And what does it mean for you and your business?
So just to give some content into that. So again, it was a podcast that I listened, or it was an episode that Cobus Klein did on the client experience and about Little Miss Wow and the book that he read. And that literally after that episode, I went and I looked for this book and I couldn't find it anywhere. And eventually I managed to get like a contact detail, and I thought, well, I'll have to reach out to this because I want to read what's in this book, because Cobus was speaking very highly of it. And I managed to reach out to Michelle, and we actually had a conversation. We had a Zoom going, and she sent us the book. And I read through that book the very same day. So I finished the book in one day, and we wanted to raise the standards in terms of client experience. And I believe that clients, again, depending on your value proposition, when we make decisions, there's obviously value proposition is defined as the total gross value that one gets minus the cost that you're paying for it. So I think very often in our industry, clients feel that there's no value because what the perceived value is, my cost is outweighing that. So there's actually no real value proposition. So client experience, people make decisions on experience. If you can raise the bar, in essence, you are creating extra value for the client. So it led to us enrolling on ISO. I pronounce it TRIP 222. I'm also not familiar if that is the right. That's how I've been positioning it to everybody. But we wanted to see are we on an international standard, the way we are positioning stuff to clients, the value that we are bringing to them, which led to an assessment that they did with us. Very informative. We had so much great conversations with Michelle. She had an insight into our business, highlighted some of the blind spots. She understood our business a little bit better, because in our instance, like we're aspiring to get doctors to get to our office, but it might not be always possible. You guys know, when you meet with the doctor, they're not even at their own office. So for us, we had to see how can we build a value proposition around their times, etc. And you might be listening to this episode and you might be working on engineers or business owners or whatever the case is. You need to sit down and see, but how can you raise the bar in terms of that client experience that you raise and that you bring to the client. So the whole engagement for us initially led to how can we just raise the bar and create a wow moment. If they deal with these guys, it's like, this is something that I've never dealt before. I feel there's value again, and I'm only paying this, but the amount of value and the experience just outweighs it.
Awesome. Guys, this was an amazing conversation. I still have a couple of questions, but I'm out of time. Really amazing to chat to you and to sort of learn about your journey, to listen to what you're doing. And I always say, like, listen to what others are doing and then go make it applicable to what you do. This doesn't mean that everybody now needs to go out and want to be working with doctors because it seems so amazing. Find who that is for you. You know, what is that target client for you, and go after them and have a proposition, do things that nobody else is doing. And one, you will stand out, but two, you'll be adding value and you'll be growing your business, your networks, and everything else that you want to do. So Werner and Stefan, from me, just a massive thank you. And I think we should continue this conversation. I will definitely be in touch, because I think there's a couple of things I still want to talk to you about. But thank you much for your time.
Thanks everybody.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cool stuff, and good luck with everything. I will chat soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Remember to check out the live show, Propulsion Live, on YouTube every Friday at 7 a.m. South African time. You can find it at www.propulsion.co.za/live. That's propulsion.co.za/live. And please remember to subscribe, share with your colleagues, your friends, and anyone who may find value like you did in this podcast. Once again, thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next episode.